Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to this Mythic Plus Week Analyzed. This week's affixes are Tyrannical, Bolstering, Explosive, and of course, Awakened. This is a pretty nasty combination of affixes for high-level Mythic Plus, for groups that are running up against the timer. So if you're in a group where your success in a key is based on the timer being tight, this is 3 affixes that punish that very heavily. So Tyrannical is a lot slower than Fortified because it adds just so much time to these boss fights in a way that you can't really shrink that past a certain amount. And then Bolstering and Explosive both are massive speed bumps that stop you from pulling more than really 1 or 2 packs at a time in most cases. So that combination really is going to hold most groups that last week and next week will be pushing, or have pushed and will be pushing, keys in that 30 range to a much lower level than that. However, that is not most of you, because that's not most people, because that's very few people in the world. For groups that are in that kind of 20 range even, which is, higher than almost anybody will ever go, this is not necessarily the worst week. You have to just kind of pull through the dungeons 1 pack at a time and kill the bosses. And if you have a lot of damage relative to the key level, which you can at that level, then that's going to work out just fine for you. You're going to be okay. And then if you're going in the even lower key level, as you start getting to a certain degree of disorganization in groups, and lower keys often tend to be pretty full of that, you kind of will again start to get into this position where, okay, we don't have anybody in the group who is capable of killing explosives, who knows how to do that, who knows that they need to do that. And also we start getting into a range where bolstering as an affix becomes a problem. So a little bit of a U-shaped curve of difficulty this week, where in kind of that 15 to 20 coordinated group that that has quite a lot of damage and just needs to not wipe this week, then it's actually a fine week for those groups. And groups at either end of the spectrum, where you're either ultra coordinated and are running up against the timer, or ultra uncoordinated and have a lot of trouble with bolstering and explosive, those are going to be that's kind of the where it's going to be a lot harder. In terms of specific classes this week, you're looking for anti-explosive classes. Having at least one of these in your group is going to be really helpful. Kind of the classic for this is Outlaw Rogue historically, but Beastmaster Hunter actually does a pretty good job of that this season as well. That's been popping up a lot, and they do a really good job of not losing actually basically any damage targeting explosive orbs. Tanks that are effective and that are on top of this will be valuable too. So this can be basically any tank, but any tank that knows to click on the explosive orb, kill them. Particularly the way that most groups at a high end will operate with regards to explosive is generally the tank will take care of it on boss fights, and the rogue or the hunter or whatever will be focused on it in the big trash pulls, because that's usually where the tank has more going on and needs to be targeting actual enemies to crowd control them or to get threat or whatever. And so that's usually the division of labor for handling explosive. You can do this week without having any of the classes in your group that are particularly good at explosive, but having one will really help. It can be a little bit tough, though, to convince an Outlaw Rogue to do more than 1 or 2 keys this week, because you'll whisper them and you'll be like, hey, you want to do some keys? And then they'll get in your group and they'll be like, yeah, this is going to be fun. And then after that first key, they'll realize they've been duped, right? They've been tricked. They're not actually going to get to do Mythic Plus this week. This week, they're playing Explosive Killing Simulator. And that is not a very fun game for a lot of rogues, for a lot of hunters, for a lot of people whose job that would be. So it's really a diplomatic problem this week, figuring out how to trick somebody to come into your groups and kill explosives for you. But once you can solve that, that's pretty good. For bolstering, you're really just looking for classes with effective crowd control for some dungeons. Some dungeons are crowd control intensive to play around bolstering. A good example of that would be like Siege of Borealis is a dungeon where, with bolstering active, if you have somebody, this room, for instance, here, this first room for Horde side, can be done pretty quickly, even with bolstering active, by crowd controlling 4 enemies at once, and then fighting 10 small enemies and then 4 big enemies at once. If you have those kind of effective crowd control in your group, so stuff like Rogue's really good here, again, because it has 2 crowd controls, Sap and Blind, but there are a lot of effective answers to this as well that you can find, and you can find it without a Rogue as well, just by everybody bringing 1 CC to the group pretty much. That will help you out with bolstering. The other thing that bolstering looks for in some dungeons is priority damage, being able to assign your damage proportionally to the health of the mobs in the pool. A good example of a dungeon where this is an issue is like the Motherlode. This first area of the Motherlode here, you have a lot of pulls where like this has 3 times as much health as the other things, and then this has like 1.5 times as much health as the average mob in the pool, and then there are some mobs that have like slightly less than the average mob in the pool as well. So having people in your group that are able to do a good job of dividing their damage based on that That's not necessarily just a class and spec thing. That's often a player thing as well, but that combination is pretty important. And some classes do have an easier time of doing that than others. Again, don't have your expectations too high this week. Don't expect to see all that much high-level Mythic Plus. My plan, in fact, I'm recording this 2 weeks in advance because I expect to be so busy the week before this current week here with I've got this thing that I'm going to be doing on my stream that hopefully has worked out well by the time you guys are seeing this video, where me and Tettles are going to commentate some high-level Mythic Plus runs from the top teams around the world on week number 4 here. If that goes well, we might even do it on week number 6 here. Week number 5 is going to be a little bit of a week off for the teams involved in that, and probably for me as well. I'm probably going to be taking a little bit of time off after that. So this is definitely a week where it's tough to play too many bolstering explosive keys for most people, because bolstering and explosive, especially explosive for the people that have to deal with it, are just such intensive affixes that you can just get exhausted after. People that are capable of playing 4 hours of keys in a week or in a night will find themselves getting burned out after 1 or 2 this week. And I think that's something that's actually pretty common regardless of keystone level. Anyways, those are just some of my thoughts on this week. Again, if you're interested in a video where I actually go over each dungeon this week and pathing and stuff to remember in each dungeon, I'll have a link for that in the description below. I made that 12 weeks ago, the last time we got this week around. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe. Check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Dratnos. Thanks everybody for watching. I will see you in the next one.